EMP Series, Day 3. After waking up and having bacon, eggs, and fried potatoes for breakfast, Pastor, Greg, and I boarded the bus. I thought to myself that we were eating really well, but after all the perishable stuff was gone or went bad, we would be in for a little change in our menus. Greg drove the bus. He told us that if we took an alternate route through a state park, we could knock 3 miles off of our 15-mile ride and have less exposure at the same time. The road was rough in places, but he took it off in his pickup truck, and he knew it well. We got through town with no problem. We saw several people on the road, but we were the only ones in a vehicle, so they weren't much of a threat to us. Just then, as we headed up the hill out of town, we came around an S-curve in the road and saw them. 4 men, civilians by the look of it, standing in the road. They were all armed with rifles. Behind them, they had rolled 2 cars together, effectively blocking the road. The guy in the front put his hand up for us to stop. Pastor said, "Oh boy." Greg looked back at me, and I said, "Run it." He hit the gas, and the men scattered out of our way. As we hit the first car, the bus veered to the left and slowed considerably. We heard the shots as the back window of the bus shattered. Greg geared down and took another run at the cars. More shots. One hit the back of the driver's seat and came out the front, about 4 inches to the right of Greg's shoulder. I saw the guy with the rifle who fired the shot. I held up the Mini 14 and fired 3 times out of the opening where the back window used to be. I hit him once in the chest and he went down fast and hard in the street. I heard Pastor yell to Greg, "Are you okay?" He said he was, as he floored the gas and sped away as quickly as possible. We took several more shots to the back of the bus. I heard them hit the door. I fired another volley out of the back, but didn't appear to hit anyone. We were now a safe distance away. I reloaded my rifle. Pastor had the Mossberg sitting next to him on the seat. He was closest to the front door, sitting in the first seat behind it. If anyone was able to enter through the front, he would be ready to blast them back out. We were peaceful, law-abiding men, but if you mean to do us harm, we will do everything possible to defend ourselves. We got to Greg's house at 7:15 a.m. Lee was awake, and when we pulled the bus up the driveway, she appeared in the door with a shotgun, pointed out at us, and yelled, "What do you want?" Greg smiled and said, "That's my girl." She saw it was him, driving almost immediately, and lowered the muzzle to the ground. She and Greg shared an emotional moment of reunion, and we were all glad she was okay. She told us she had to chase off a group of 3 teenagers who showed up at the door late last night. She told us they were drunk and belligerent, but quickly fled after she fired the 12-gauge, shattering a hanging potted plant 2 feet from the ringleader's head. Again, Greg simply stated, "That's my girl." From Greg's house, we retrieved 7 rifles, 2 shotguns, and 3 crates of ammo, 3 5-gallon containers of fresh water, 6 pounds of pasta, and 2 cases of canned sauce. 30 gallons of gasoline, an axe, another gas grill, and 5 boxes of various other foods. 1 box of toiletries and first aid supplies, and 4 large packages of toilet paper. Also a large pile of blankets, clothing, and 2 large canvas tarps. Among Greg's guns was an M60 light machine gun with 4,000 rounds of ammo. He managed to somehow procure the gun when he left Southeast Asia in 1969. He claimed he had 75% of a Jeep in his garage that he sent home a piece at a time. He said if he had served in country for 3 more months, he would have had the entire thing. But he left gladly when they gave him his walking papers and never looked back. He had always meant to look for the remaining parts needed to finish building the Jeep, but just never did and eventually lost interest in it. Greg was a great guy that would do anything for anybody. But it was widely believed within our church family that he was somebody you would never want to cross or mess with in any way. There was a rumor floating around that before he got saved, his ex-wife left him to be with another man. She took the house he built for them and moved her new boyfriend in with her. Sometime later, someone threw a Molotov cocktail through the picture window that sent the ex-wife and boyfriend running out in the middle of the cold, dark night to helplessly watch the house burn to the ground. The state police relentlessly questioned Greg for hours on several occasions. The investigation never led anywhere, and no charges were ever filed in the matter. When asked about it, Greg's standard response was, "I can neither confirm nor deny any knowledge of that event." Whenever at any church function, when we needed to make a fire, Greg would always take a plastic cup of gasoline and throw it on the pile of wood. He would throw a match at it, smile, and say, "That's the best way I know to start something to burning." I didn't know him when he was younger, but they say when he returned home from Vietnam he was pretty messed up. He wouldn't talk too much about those days. He just said, "I came in early one morning from walking around all night on patrol in the jungle. They told me I had 15 minutes to pack and be on a Jeep. They drove me to an airstrip and put me on a plane. I was in my parents' living room 19 hours later. Never got to say goodbye to anybody. Just there in the morning, home at night. Spent the rest of my life trying to readjust." By the time I met him, he seemed pretty normal. Just, like I say, someone you wouldn't want to mess with. He was a dear brother and I loved him. He was soft-spoken, but at the same time, obviously afraid of nothing. He told me once that the day he left Vietnam, he knew the rest of his life would be a piece of cake. He survived when many did not. He would never have to fear or worry another day as long as he lived. The day after the EMP attack, when I walked up the church driveway and saw his truck and knew he was stranded there, I couldn't help feeling a little glad that he was. We all boarded the bus and I jumped into the driver's seat. I knew Greg would want to sit with Lee on the ride back. And Pastor was stationed again by the door with the Mossberg. When we came down the hill, we saw the cars where the guys tried to block the road earlier. There was the guy that I shot still lying in the road. Nobody else was around, and I just kept going. I certainly wasn't going to stop. Just then, as if he could read my mind, Greg yelled up to me, "You did what you had to do. He was trying to kill us. Don't lose any sleep over it." I looked back at him through the mirror and just gave him a nod. He never spoke about it again. We headed back through town and up the hill back out of town in the other direction toward the church. As we were starting up the hill, we saw a young lady, by herself, standing in front of a car with the hood open, looking into the engine compartment. Pastor told us to stop and see if we could help her. She was all alone and looked vulnerable. Greg cautioned him against it and thought we should just keep going. Lee quickly made it clear that she was also of the opinion that we should stop and help the young lady. Greg sharply said, "Stop the bus." I pulled over behind her and opened the door. Before any of us could get out the door, 3 men looking to be about 30-something years old appeared out of nowhere. They started to rush onto the bus. Pastor lifted the shotgun, but instead of firing it, he grabbed it by the barrel and swung it, hitting the first guy above the eye and sending him back out the door and onto the ground. The second guy fired his handgun at Pastor, striking him in the left arm. I saw the switch go off in his head as he leveled the Mossberg toward the door and fired 5 shots in succession. The 2 guys flew back and landed with the first on the pavement. I never saw anything like it. They were obviously both dead, and then some. It was very gruesome, to say the least. The guy with the gash above his eye from the shotgun butt got up and ran back behind the car, staggering from being dazed by the blow to the head. The girl was already crouched down behind the car as well. Greg yelled, "Go, go, go!" Pastor said, "Hang on," and jumped down out of the door. He took the handgun from the second guy's hand and reboarded the bus and said, "Okay, go." I put it in gear and sped away. Pastor tucked the handgun in his waistband. Greg looked at him and asked Pastor to hand him the pistol. When he did, Greg grabbed it, racked the slide back, and ejected the round from the chamber. He released the mag in his other hand, picked up the live round and put it back in the mag and reinserted the mag into the gun. Greg looked up at me and said, "45. I told him that was good because we had plenty of ammo for it. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out one of the 3 mags I had for the 1911. I handed it to him and said, "Here's 8 rounds. He ejected them one by one into his hand and gave me back the empty mag. He smiled and loaded 2 rounds into the gun and gave the remaining 6 and the gun to Pastor. He said, "Here, now you won't shoot yourself in the belly. 1 gunshot wound a day is enough." While looking over at Lee, he sternly told me, "We stop for nothing until we get back to church." I simply said, "Amen, brother." Lee and Pastor both nodded simultaneously in agreement. Greg examined Pastor's gunshot wound. He was seemingly in a lot of pain. Greg told Lee to get the first aid kit from the box of supplies they got from their house, put a Band-Aid on it. He looked at Pastor and said, "You'll be fine." I have to admit it made me feel better. We rolled back on a church property at 5:45. It was almost dusk, and we had quite a day. I went and sat with Linda and told her everything that we had just been through. She asked me if I was okay, and I told her that I would be. The truth is, I had to be. Pastor and I had both killed people today for the first time. Greg hadn't killed anyone. Today, at least. However, he saw it all go down. So did Lee. Some of it, anyway. Would we ever be the same? I just wanted to try to go to sleep and put it out of my head. We had a nice meal and it was time to do tower duty. We moved Greg and Lee into the missionary apartment and put Gina on a rollaway cot in Aaron and Callie's living room with the kids. Everybody else went to bed around 10. I sat in the tower until 1 a.m. when Pastor took over. We talked a little bit about the events of the bus trip. He seemed pretty okay. As okay as anyone could be in that situation. Linda had cleaned out the wound and rebandaged it. It was fairly superficial. That was good, at least. I offered to stay up for a while and talk with him if he wanted. He assured me he was okay and told me to go get some rest. Tomorrow would be here before we knew it. I said goodnight and climbed down out of the tower.